Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're undertaking a deeply empathetic, really contemplative journey together. We're going to explore a profoundly moving piece of writing by poet Denis Martindale titled The Scream Dream. Grief is such a universal human experience, right? But it's so frequently hidden away, locked behind closed doors and these stoic, brave faces we put on. Well, Martindale's poem pulls back the curtain on all that hidden pain. It presents us with this vivid, almost cinematic landscape where the boundaries between our public identity and our deeply personal sorrow completely dissolve. It's an exploration of what actually happens when the heavy weight of loss finally demands to be heard.
Okay, let's dive into this. Can a surreal dream actually unlock our deepest hidden grief? It's a fascinating question, isn't it? During our waking hours, our minds are usually just too guarded to process immense pain. We put up walls, we stay super busy, we maintain our composure. But when we sleep, those defenses completely drop. Martindale uses the landscape of a dream to bypass all those waking defenses, plunging us right into the raw, unfiltered reality of mourning. So throughout this explainer, we're going to use the structure of this incredible poem to examine the mechanics of silent grief and, frankly, the absolute necessity of its release. Section 1, The Surreal Dream Unfolds. We're stepping straight into the vivid setting of the poet's dreamscape right away. And this brilliantly illustrates a powerful psychological divide. On one hand, we have this public facade, a famous American actor dressed in a military uniform you'd recognize from a long-running TV series. He's got that recognizable, solemn face. He is a literal symbol of strength and public consumption. But then, contrast that with his private reality. He's just a grieving husband, completely stripped of any Hollywood glamour, standing all alone in a humble barn on his farm, paying his last respects next to his wife's coffin. It just perfectly shows how often we wear uniforms, whether they're literal or metaphorical, to mask the fragile, agonizing reality of our private lives. Now, the poem maps out this very deliberate physical movement, which mirrors the internal buildup of emotional pressure perfectly. Let's walk through this timeline together. In the first minute, he's in the barn, respectfully and quietly paying his final respects. Moving to the second minute, he mounts his patient, noble steed and slowly rides out of the barn. By the third minute, he's ridden for about 100 yards. It seems like a perfectly dignified, controlled exit. But then, the physical motion just completely halts. He turns the horse back to face the barn. He's caught lingering in that impossible space between moving on and looking back. It's the timeline of a man trying to physically carry away a burden that is just simply way too heavy to bear. Section 2. A sudden breaking point. We've now reached the emotional climax, where the literal motion of the dream abruptly stops. So the crucial point is this absolute jarring stillness. The text notes that the poor man was suddenly motionless, as if his life meant nothing to him anymore. I mean, just think about that imagery. The actor, the uniform, the horse, the farm, all the everyday trappings of his existence, they all just freeze. In the face of such monumental loss, all forward momentum ceases. The facade doesn't crack with a flurry of movement, but with a paralyzing, terrifying stillness. It's that eerie calm right before a devastating emotional storm. And then, the silence shatters. The poet, who's acting as the witness in the dream, hears the breaking point. The text reads, "It was an unexpected, horrifying scream, full of anguish, followed by the sounds of his sobbing." I really want us to just sit with the heavy, raw weight of that for a second. This isn't some quiet, cinematic tear rolling down a cheek for the cameras. This is an agonizing rupture of silence. It is the sound of human soul just being torn open. It's the absolute, uncontrollable manifestation of grief that can no longer be contained by any military uniform or stoic public persona. Section 3. Permission to mourn. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the narrator's psychological insight. The witness hears this horrifying scream, and their reaction is, yes, let him scream, let him sob, let him weep. Do not intervene, hinder him, or cut him short. Instinctively, when we see someone in utter agony, we want to comfort them, right? We want to stop the crying, offer a tissue, tell them, shh, it's going to be okay. But the poet recognizes that doing that actually hinders the healing process. This kind of grief isn't a problem to be fixed. It's a reality to be faced. Choosing not to intervene is actually an act of profound respect for the sheer magnitude of his loss. This moment acts as a completely necessary catharsis. It's an unfiltered release of everything. He is finally letting go of all those sorrows, fears, and tears he had forced himself to hold back. And crucially, he's doing it in a solitary space. There is nobody near him to stop him, to judge him, or to make him conform to some polite societal expectation of mourning. It is his rightful permission to fully face his grief head-on. It happens entirely in the here and the now, which transforms a moment of solitary agony into a deeply empathetic, shared human experience for anyone witnessing it.
Section 4. Tears of Love. Zooming all the way out from the surreal dreamscape back to waking reality, we can really define our core theme here: silent grief. It is the internal, unprocessed sorrow held back behind a stoic persona, which eventually demands a powerful emotional release to truly honor the loss. The dream is reflecting this absolute necessity. You simply cannot hold back the tide forever. Eventually, that silent grief must be given a voice, even if that voice is a horrifying scream echoing across an empty farm. Let's move to and see how this builds, because this brings us to the poem's true origin. The dream ends suddenly, but the memory sticks in the poet's waking mind. And here is the real revelation. This entire mournful dream was actually the poet's own subconscious way of processing the recent, real-world loss of his sister. Dated May 9th, 2026, this surreal vision of a famous actor mourning his wife was really just the poet's own heart grappling with the overwhelming, paralyzing reality of his own sister's passing. And he concludes with this incredibly beautiful, grounding thought. There is a time for every purpose under heaven, even when the tears of grief are the tears of love. That is just profoundly empathetic. It grounds the entire piece in this universal truth: the immense, seemingly unbearable sorrow we feel when we lose someone, the kind of sorrow that makes us want to stop dead in our tracks and scream out loud, is simply the unspent love we still hold for them. The tears of grief, truly, are the tears of love. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today. And I want to leave you with this final provocative question to reflect upon. How do you allow yourself this space to release the silent grief that you've chosen to hold back? Are you out there wearing a uniform, maintaining a stoic facade, when what you really need is the permission to simply stop, feel, and release? Thank you so much for exploring this poignant reflection with me. Take care of yourselves and give yourself the grace to feel exactly what you need to feel.